She looked at the old drawing, the one she once gave me, and smirked. "You're too sentimental," she said. "It's just paper." I didn't argue. But later that week, I stared at the ring on her hand and remembered exactly where it came from. Funny how things lose value when you stop pretending they meant something. Some relationships end in fire. Others rot slowly, like fruit left out too long. Ours didn't explode. It thinned out, stretched over empty dinners, shared screens, non-conversations. I used to think memories mattered. The inside jokes, the morning routines, the stupid little things. Like the napkin drawing she once made of the two of us, stick figures holding hands, my glasses crooked, her devil horns lopsided. She drew it when we were still pretending to be invincible. I framed it, not because it was beautiful, but because it was ours. She saw it last week and laughed. A dry, effortless laugh. Then came the line, "You're too sentimental. It's just paper." I didn't respond, didn't correct her. But something shifted, not in her, in me. It wasn't the first time she made me feel small for caring. It was just the first time I didn't push back. It started with cleaning. That was the irony. I was rearranging my desk, the way people do when they're not sure what they're avoiding. The drawing had been there for years, tucked into a cheap frame, right beside the lamp she hated and the mug I always chipped but refused to throw out. She walked past, saw it, paused. Then the scoff, a sound I used to think meant confusion. Now I know better. "You're too sentimental," she said, almost to herself. "It's just paper." She didn't say it to hurt me. That would have been easier. Intent is clean. But this was casual. A truth she assumed I already accepted. I didn't flinch, just smiled, kept moving pins around like I hadn't heard. But something small collapsed inside my chest. Quietly, I kept thinking, she gave that to me. Once. She doodled it while we waited for pancakes at some roadside diner. She laughed when she handed it over, told me, "This is our album cover." I remember that exact phrase. I remember the song that was playing. I remember the syrup stain in the corner. Apparently, she didn't. I spent the rest of the day staring at things like they were props from a show I didn't realize was canceled. A playlist we built together that now made her roll her eyes. The memory jar we stopped filling after month 6. Even her laugh, the one I used to love, had started to sound like a sigh with teeth. It wasn't about the drawing. It was what it represented, a version of us that used to make sense. Now I realized. I'd been holding on to a relationship that only existed in fragments. And she'd already moved on. She just hadn't told me yet. A few days later, I tested the waters. Not directly. I've learned that directness only makes me look fragile in her eyes. I made a comment in passing. Something like, "Funny how that old napkin outlasted everything else." She glanced up from her phone. Blank expression, tilted head, like I'd just spoken in Morse code. "You're seriously still thinking about that napkin thing?" A laugh. Sharp. Unapologetic. "God, you're dramatic." And just like that, I wasn't a person with a memory. I was a caricature. A moody boyfriend who couldn't take a joke. I nodded, said nothing. But in my head, I watched the scene over again. The tone, the words, the way her mouth curled when she called me dramatic, like she'd won something. And I realized, I've been losing this game for longer than I thought. It wasn't the first time she reframed what happened to suit her. I'd seen it with bigger things too. When she forgot our anniversary once and made it about me being obsessed with calendar dates. Or when I got upset, she shared something I told her in confidence, and she said, "I just needed to vent." "You're overreacting." The pattern was always the same. She crossed a line. I noticed, she laughed. And suddenly, I was the problem for noticing. I used to think that kind of thing was accidental. That people just had different emotional languages. But over time, you start to feel the erosion. Not like a crash, but like a slow leak. Every time I brought something up, I left the conversation doubting myself more. I started asking questions I shouldn't have to ask. Am I too sensitive? Am I holding on too tightly? Am I just inventing pain where there is none? But underneath all that, something sharper was forming. Not anger. Not yet. Just a quiet clarity. If someone mocks the things that matter to you, and you keep letting them, eventually, you start mocking yourself. And I wasn't ready to do that anymore. When the person you're with makes you feel invisible, you start looking for someone who sees you, anyone. So I talked to her best friend. The one who used to tell me, back in year 1, "You're the best thing that's ever happened to her." I didn't go in expecting a miracle. I just needed a human moment. Some validation. Maybe a voice to say, "Yeah, That was cold. She listened. That part was real. She didn't interrupt. She even nodded in the right places. And for a second, I felt less crazy. Then she said, "She's just not great with emotions. You know that." I waited. There was a but coming. There always is. And it landed exactly where I knew it would. "You probably overthought it." There it was. Soft gaslighting, dressed in cashmere. Draped in empathy, but soaked in dismissal. I smiled, said, "Yeah, maybe." But inside, I wasn't nodding. I was mapping the entire pattern. This wasn't new. Her friends always had these polished excuses. "She's blunt, but she means well. She's just direct, it's refreshing. She doesn't do fake feelings." They painted her like some chaotic truth teller. And me? I was too sensitive, too introspective, too much. It was subtle, the way they rewrote the dynamics. She was a force of nature. I was the damp towel. I used to laugh it off, pretend I didn't notice. But now I was noticing everything. How the emotional labor always fell on me. How working through things meant me translating her coldness into something palatable. How even when I hurt, I was expected to package it attractively, so her friends could stay comfortable, so she could stay unchallenged, so I could stay quiet. That conversation ended like they all did, with a pat on the back, a gentle pivot, a change of topic. It wasn't about me, not really. I walked home thinking. I went looking for a mirror, found a window, and the only thing reflected back was how little room this version of me was allowed to take up. The ring had always been there, on her hand, glinting in photos, tapping against wine glasses, catching the light like it belonged. But now it started to bother me, not in a jealous way, not even in a curious way, just something itched. It was the shape, not the stone, that was standard, but the setting, the way it sat slightly too tall, like it was trying to be important. It triggered something in the back of my mind, a déjà vu I hadn't invited. I stared at it longer than I should have that week. At dinner, while she talked about something she saw online. In the car, while she scrolled and half-listened. Then it hit me. I'd seen that exact design before. Not on her. Not first. On my ex. Years ago, when I was broke, scared, and trying too hard to be romantic. I'd bought a ring from a closing jewelry store, a dusty little place with final sale stickers on everything. It wasn't much, but I told myself it was enough. I still had the email. I searched for it like I was looking for proof I hadn't gone insane. There it was. Same photo. Same SKU number. Same discount. My chest went still. Not in heartbreak. In recognition. This wasn't coincidence. This was recycling. She wore that ring like it was handpicked, like it symbolized something uniquely us. But it wasn't selected for her. It was just leftover. And somehow, that made everything click into place. The drawing I kept, she mocked. The ring she flaunted, I'd seen before. Every symbol I treated as sacred was, to her, just a placeholder. We weren't building a life together. We were just running someone else's script. With cheaper actors. I didn't confront her. Didn't ask where she got it. Didn't pretend to be shocked. I just sat with the knowledge. Let it settle. Let it grow teeth. Because now, I had context. Now I understood. It wasn't that she forgot what mattered. She never cared in the first place. Memory's a funny thing. You think it sleeps until something small wakes it up, like a piece of cheap jewelry catching sunlight at the wrong angle. The first time I saw that ring, I was standing in a near-empty jewelry store that smelled like cardboard and lemon cleaner. It was closing down. Everything must go, scrawled in red tape across the windows. I was 26. Flat broke. In love. I wanted to propose. Didn't care how tacky it looked, as long as it meant something. I picked the ring because it was all I could afford. Wrote a note with it, too. Long, awkward, hopeful. My ex never wore it. Said it felt like a chain. I kept it in a drawer. Not out of sentimentality. More like shame. A reminder of how stupid hope can look in the wrong hands. I forgot about it eventually. Until it showed up again, on another woman's hand. The same setting. The same slightly crooked fit. Only now, it wasn't wrapped in intention. It was paraded like a prize. She called it elegant. Classic. She posted close-ups with hashtags. Hashtag blessed. Hashtag forever. Hashtag Hagatatrite. And all I could think was, I didn't even get it right the first time. There's something uniquely cruel about watching a recycled object get treated like treasure by someone who would throw out everything else that ever mattered. It made me realize, this wasn't the second act of something real. This was a rerun. And I wasn't the leading man. I was the placeholder. The one who fills the frame until the next person shows up. The ring didn't connect us. It exposed us. Exposed how much I wanted meaning and how much she wanted appearance. Exposed the lie I'd been telling myself, that we had something worth salvaging. Exposed her entire version of love, borrowed, hollow, performative. I started seeing the rest of our relationship through the same filter. Not through memories, through mistakes, patterns, repetitions. She wasn't the first woman to laugh at my softness. She just did it more efficiently. And now, with that ring glittering like irony on her finger, I saw everything clearly. I wasn't mourning a person. I was mourning a cycle. Our 4-year anniversary was coming up. Not that she remembered it like that. She mentioned it in passing, as if it were a random date on a calendar. No build-up. No warmth. Just, oh, we don't have to do anything big. We're not those people. And there it was again, the quiet revision. We're not those people. Meaning, people who care. People who mark time. People who feel proud for lasting through something. Once upon a time, we were those people. Or at least I was. She used to plan months ahead. Write cards that took actual effort. Now she didn't even want dinner. Just a shrug and a, maybe we'll figure something out. I knew what that meant. She wouldn't forget. She'd pretend to. A difference only someone still pretending to care would notice. So I made a plan. Not to celebrate. To end it. Not with drama. Not with a speech. Just with precision. Quiet. Surgical. Final. I bought 2 things. The first was the drawing. The napkin sketch she mocked. I had it reprinted on archival paper, professionally framed. Not for nostalgia. For contrast. The second was the ring. Not hers. Another one, identical design, same model number. Straight from the same clearance line. I left the discount tag on. Deliberately. Not as revenge, but as context. If she was going to laugh at what mattered, she should see what didn't. I wrapped both. No ribbon. No cards. Just tape and patience. Then I waited. She invited friends over that weekend. Said it was just a casual thing. But the date matched. Right on our anniversary. The coincidence wasn't a coincidence. It was insulation. A crowd to dilute whatever I might be feeling. She never wanted intimacy on days that called for it. Only performance. So I gave her one. The living room smelled like wine and store-bought candles. She always lit 3, one floral, one citrus, one that smelled vaguely like ambition. Her friends were already tipsy when I arrived with the gifts. Laughing, polished, all talking louder than they needed to. She greeted me like a guest. Not a partner. Not even a familiar presence. Just someone she vaguely remembered inviting. Wow, she said, seeing the wrapped box. You didn't have to bring anything. It's just dinner. Right. Just dinner. On the exact date we first got together. I smiled. Said, thought you'd appreciate it. We ate. They laughed. I floated through the evening like a polite shadow. When dessert came out, store-bought again, I stood up, held out the box. Something small, I said, and waited. She unwrapped the first gift, the framed napkin drawing. Her face twitched. Not surprise. Not warmth. Just that flicker of calculation, trying to read the room. Her voice went up a half octave. A piece of paper, she said, chuckling. Thanks. Her friends laughed. One even said, that's so you. I don't know who they meant. I didn't flinch. I just handed her the second box. Smaller, cleaner, sharper. She opened it, looked inside, and froze. Inside, a ring. Identical to the one she wore every day. Only this one was still in the clearance bin box. Still had the sticker. $89.99, final sale. No one spoke. Her hand hovered over it, but didn't touch. I said nothing for a long moment. Then quietly, calmly, don't worry. It's just metal. Not a single person laughed. She stared at me like I'd just rewritten her origin story. And maybe I had, because now everyone in that room knew what she didn't. That the version of love she bragged about was as discounted as the ring she adored. I sat back down, took a sip of wine, and for once, I felt like I wasn't the one being humiliated. She didn't say much after everyone left. The silence was thick, not wounded, not angry, just exposed. I cleaned the glasses, wiped the counter. She hovered, trying to pretend the night hadn't happened. But her eyes were scanning me, searching for the version of me she could still dismiss. It wasn't there anymore. I started packing that night. No announcement, no confrontation, just folded shirts, zipped bags. She finally broke. You're leaving over a joke? I didn't look at her when I answered. Not over a joke. Over a pattern. I kept folding. Didn't raise my voice. Didn't remind her of the things she forgot. because that list would never end. She stood in the doorway, trying to summon some version of warmth that might land. But it didn't. Not because she wasn't trying. Because it was too late for anything to feel real. I realized I didn't need her to understand. I didn't need her to apologize. I didn't even need her to feel sorry. I just needed out. She wasn't someone who occasionally failed to show care. She was someone who built an entire dynamic around not needing to. It had always been me who carried the weight. Me who remembered. Me who paused. Me who apologized first. But now, I wasn't interested in being the emotional custodian of her indifference. I wasn't angry. Anger would have meant I still wanted something. I just wanted the version of myself that didn't flinch anymore. And apparently, he was already halfway out the door. Before I zipped the last bag, I glanced at her. She hadn't moved. Still standing there, ring catching the light. Still clinging to a script that no longer worked. I didn't say goodbye. Didn't hug her. Didn't leave her with one last memorable line. I just walked out. Calm. Complete. Because when someone shows you they think meaning is weakness, the most powerful thing you can do is stop proving you have any left to give them. I left the key on the counter, next to a short note, handwritten on the back of the same napkin she once drew on. It read, "Thanks for the memories." Or at least the parts one made up. I didn't wait for her to read it. Didn't watch her reaction. Didn't slam the door or make noise about leaving. That's not how she hurt me. So that's not how I was going to leave. She had erased me in quiet gestures, in shrugged shoulders, in half-smiles delivered at full volume. So I disappeared the same way she made my feelings disappear. Effortlessly. No block numbers. No social media declaration. No carefully crafted single-life narrative. Just space. And a silence she couldn't reframe. I didn't take everything. Didn't gut the apartment. I left the big TV she picked. The sofa she loved. Even the mirror where she once joked that her reflection was the only thing she could fully commit to. I only took what was mine. And one thing that wasn't. The frame drawing. Not because I still believed in it, but because I needed to remember the difference. The difference between something made with feeling, even if it was naive, and something worn out of convenience. The ring was still on her hand when I left, and it would be, for as long as it suited the image. But I wasn't part of that image anymore. That morning, the sun rose the same way it always did. Uninterested in closure. Indifferent to who had been right. I didn't feel free. Freedom implies release. What I felt was lighter. Which is different. It meant the weight wasn't mine anymore. It meant I didn't need to explain myself. Didn't need to be understood. Didn't need the final say. I had it already. Not in words, but in the act of leaving. Without trying to make her feel what I felt. Because the truth is, you don't teach someone the value of something by breaking it. You just take it with you and stop offering it to people who only know how to laugh at it. Weeks passed. Not dramatically. Not like in movies where the phone rings every night and regret comes crawling back in poetic texts. Just time. Moving on without asking how I felt about it. I didn't expect to hear from her. And I didn't. But I heard about her through the usual chain of mutual friends who act like their updates are casual. One of them texted me late one night. She says you humiliated her. I stared at the screen for a long time. Not angry. Not amused. Just done. I replied with 5 words. She said it was paper. No follow-up. No tone. Let her sit with her own punchline. Because that's the thing about people like her. They want to be unbothered, unshaken, untouchable. Until the moment you stop trying to be understood. Then suddenly, you're the villain. For not fighting. For not staying. For quietly removing your investment like it was ever optional. I didn't miss her. Not the way she was. But I missed the version of her I thought I knew. The one who handed me that drawing in a diner booth, grinning at her own terrible sketch. The one who joked about album covers and road trips and growing old, but never boring. Maybe that person was real once. Or maybe I just projected someone beautiful onto someone hollow. Either way, she was gone. And I finally stopped sending postcards to a place that didn't exist. The drawing now lives in a different frame. No longer displayed. Just stored. Kept not because it still hurts, but because it doesn't. Because I remember things clearly. And I've learned to stop apologizing for that. Maybe I am sentimental. Maybe I always was. But if that's a weakness, then what do you call the people who never leave anything behind? Because nothing ever meant enough to hold on to? If they call it weakness to care, what do they call it when no one cares about them anymore?